Should you be using Proviron in addition to TRT HCG to get the best libido and erection experience on testosterone replacement therapy? The answer to that question is maybe. Look, a couple things. So number one, Proviron specifically, but DHT derivatives generally, had an uncanny ability in my coaching work with people with severe sexual dysfunction to pretty substantially alleviate symptoms. Interestingly too, all of the other compounds that people seem to get sexual dysfunction from, like lion's mane, ashwagandha, dual or triple reuptake inhibitors, neurotransmitter reuptake inhibitors that have caused sexual dysfunction in people, where DHT derivatives on top of a TRT protocol help them substantially, but also like guys that are on TRT that can't quite get the protocol dialed in, like everything seems to be fine, but still there's really no libido. DHT derivatives really tend to help, and Proviron is at the top of that list, okay? Among some other compounds, but we're just going to talk about Proviron today. All right, you guys know the routine. On our website is a endless supply of very, very useful information products, video courses on dopamine, nootropics, 2 nootropic stacks, which by the way are on sale. Links and codes are in the description of this video, Torque Stack and the Cortex nootropic stack. And lastly, I'm a coach on TRT, nootropics, energy optimization, sexual dysfunction, libido optimization, host of other things. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. Slots are booking quickly. If you're thinking about booking, you got to book now. So I think the idea of adding Proviron to a TRT protocol is not new, right? It's actually all over the testosterone and TRT subreddits, and plenty of people have expressed that it has positively helped them in many beneficial ways throughout the course of their time or their tenure on TRT. Why I think that Proviron specifically, look, Masteron, Primobolan also effective in this context, but why I think Proviron is especially effective for people is 2 major reasons. Number one, one of the hardest things to get under control and in a sweet spot range for that individual on testosterone replacement therapy is estradiol. And that is because, commonly doses are prescribed entirely too high. People may over aromatize for one reason or another, or everything in their physiology is pretty straight, but they really like how they feel on 150 plus milligrams of testosterone with a little bit of HCG. Like, people like to keep testicles functional and all that neurosteroid cascade happening. But usually that takes people, in terms of serum estradiol, over both the Quest range at 29 picograms per milliliter and the LabCorp range of 42 picograms per milliliter. Or some people end up in the middle and still have sexual dysfunction. Estrogenic side effects are not just like some of the psychogenic or psychological side effects of high estrogen, or itchy nipples, puffy nipples, water retention, those kind of things, but largely sexual symptoms. So one of the primary reasons I think that Proviron is helping people to actually dial in on TRT and get like full-blown libido and sexual benefits they weren't able to achieve otherwise on TRT HCG with an AI, without an AI, like everything that they've tried, switching between esters, is number one, because Masterolone, which is the drug name for Proviron, has a high binding affinity for the enzyme aromatase that converts other steroids into estrogen, even though it does not undergo ring aromatization to estrogen. Okay, so by the way, Proviron doesn't aromatize, so it's one of the best androgens you can take for specifically androgenicity, not necessarily anabolism, although it will help you be a little more anabolic. It's likely that Masterolone prevents the conversion of other steroids, especially testosterone, to estrogen by blocking the binding site of the aromatase enzyme. All right, so this, by the way, does not mean that it's an AI, because it isn't. It's not as strong and potent as 8X or Aromacin, no question. However, being able to occupy the aromatase enzyme for temporary periods, therefore blocking the action of the conversion of other androgens, estrogenic androgens or aromatizable androgens into estradiol, is a positive, right? It's a net positive. So that's one of the reasons that Proviron is very useful for getting libido and erections back as an add-on to TRT, and we'll get to doses here in a second. Google's AI, the AI feature of Google is actually really pretty clutch these days, brings up a couple studies on DHT and penile erection. Now, this is one of the things in my coaching work that I've seen be very effective for increasing erectile quality in guys that are just not able to achieve like solid, sustainable, feasible erections for sex and otherwise. Like guys that's numbers look fine, but they're really not waking up in the morning wood. They don't really have nocturnal wood. They kind of require Cialis to function normally in this capacity. I've seen Proviron and DHT derivatives in some cases, test cream or DHT cream, be very effective. Like it's just a missing link for some of these guys. All right, the AI in Google here is referencing transdermal DHT gel treatment on penile size. A study of 120 men aged 50 to 70 found that DHT treatment improved the ability to maintain erections. You're going to find this fucking everywhere. One of the primary reasons that DHT, in addition to binding to androgen receptors and activating post-androgen receptor genetic cascade that facilitates penile erection, is nitric oxide, okay? It's actually been studied that in rats, the main androgen that mediates nitric oxide facilitated erectile quality is DHT. TRT. What they ultimately found is that castrated rats who would otherwise have erectile failure, they were able to prevent that erectile failure by having DHT in the mix. And that's mediated by changes which are likely optimization of nitric oxide synthase, which turns your arginine into active nitric oxide, right? You fucking need nitric oxide for boners. If you got some sort of deficiency, your boners are going to be lackluster. For reference, this is that one paper on the rat. So if you want to look at that title and go Google it and just have a read, that will give you a good degree of information. So those are the two reasons that Proviron is very beneficial for people on TRT. While it's pulling people with massive sexual dysfunction out of these holes and able to get libido and erections back. Number one, it is mildly occupying the aromatase enzyme for unknown amount of period, but it is preventing some of the conversion of other androgens, specifically testosterone, into estradiol, right? And estradiol is like fucking number one problem with men on TRT. Number two, though, DHT mediated changes, optimization in nitric oxide synthase, facilitating further nitric oxide, is helping erectile quality. Thirdly, though, what's important about DHT for people to remember is that DHT itself binds to androgen receptors in the brain. It is very potent for masculinizing the brain. We all know that the brain is heavily involved, especially limbic system, hypothalamus, in libido regulation. So, my proposition is that DHT is also, via binding to androgen receptors in the brain, facilitating kind of that mental visceral libido, which often gets lost for people that can't get their protocol straight. Here's a Reddit thread that is titled Proviron for Libido Experiences, in which a guy goes, very good if you're a high aromatizer with elevated estrogen levels and optimal tests. I'm on 100 to 120 milligrams a sip and 20 to 40 milligrams prop. Prop made me more jacked and boosted my libido, which it definitely does. I'm always changing the sip prop ratio while I maintain the weekly dose. In this way, I'm feeling good and don't have that used to feeling. 25 to 50 milligrams Proviron in the morning and the other half at night. My E-sides are totally manageable, and the dick is like a steel rod. I mean, you're going to find this across most experiences, positive ones on the web regarding Proviron, is that you're getting hard, firm erections, all right, which every guy on the planet, wants, especially people on TRT. Another guy, yeah, it's incredible for libido, but long-term will cause hair loss. Not necessarily, right? It all depends on your genetics. Some people are going to be predisposed to losing hair on TRT or on testosterone or on, DHT, and some people aren't. I ran test cream and my DHT went to 154 nanograms per deciliter, and guess what? Zero hair loss, boys. All right, zero hair loss. Another post, TRT plus Proviron equals wow. Guy goes, hey guys, I'm on TRT for 3 months, 100 milligrams enanthate per week, pinned twice a week at 50 milligrams. Pretty good protocol. After 2 months, I felt that my libido went away. Okay, this was just on test, and this typically happens for guys. Again, some people, via maybe being hypogonadal for some time, maybe they've got downregulated 5-alpha reductase and they're not making enough DHT. There are reasons why some people will need Proviron and DHT derivatives or DHT cream on testosterone, right? It's just stuff that you may not actually be able to fucking measure, that you don't know, is happening at the tissue level regarding a lack of saturation of androgens in your history. Guy goes, doc prescribed me low dose Proviron, 0.25. He means 25 milligrams a day. I seriously can do anything now. My mood and libido improved much. Hope this won't stop. Another post, is anyone on Proviron long term as an add-on as part of TRT? Guy in the comment section goes, I do. I have Proviron. Sometimes I take it for 1 to 2 weeks. Gives me extra horniness and it feels good, but I don't feel it's something so drastic. I'm already horny enough on TRT. So here's a guy that, dialed in and has a good experience, but gets even hornier when taking Proviron. In the comment section on a thread in our steroids goes, I'm running Proviron usually at 40 milligrams every day. Benefits: increased dryness, increased vascularity, great mood, insane libido boost. Seems to mask some high E2 symptoms for me, which allows me to let the E2 climb higher than without Proviron. So here's the bottom line. All right, there's a ton of anecdotals out there. We know that it occupies aromatase, so you're preventing some of your conversion of testosterone into estradiol, which is hugely beneficial on almost everybody that can't dial in on TRT. It is likely that the potent erectogenic properties of Proviron are via nitric oxide mediated mechanisms that are facilitating better erections. But how the fuck do you dose it, right? There are people suggesting you dose 25 milligrams a day, 50 milligrams a day. Some people are even dosing upwards of 100 milligrams a day of Proviron. People are actually doing that. This would be my educated suggestion, okay? Number one, take your TRT dose down to between 100 and 130 milligrams. This way, you're going to aromatize less than if you're at 150, 175, obviously 200. right? You want that as a baseline. You want to generally aromatize less. So anything you can do to aromatize less, you want to do. Number two, for good measure and for testicular function in the neurosteroid cascades, as well as some libido and erectile enhancement, have HCG in your protocol, but you don't have to superdose it. Just make sure you're getting minimally 250 IU per injection, and ideally something like 500 IU per injection plus. I mean, I'm crazy with it. I go 500 IU 1,000 and then just wait 4 or 5 days and dose it again. It all really depends on what's happening in my protocol. Well, I think HCG is like a critical staple in people's TRT protocol, so long as you can manage the estrogen that's going to come from it. Now, on top of that though, okay, so you got your low dose, pretty low dose test, you got a minimum effective dose of HCG. What I would honestly do is in the evening, okay, this is critically important because you're maintaining erectile quality overnight, and you're going to need that DHT in the active half-life, which is about 13 hours of Proviron in the middle of the night, right? Like kind of as the night goes on and as you go to sleep, to maintenance, which is your time to maintenance erection quality for, in the context of like nocturnal erections. So my suggestion would be start with a low dose of Proviron on top of a TRT protocol that kind of looks similar to what I just suggested. 12.5 milligrams, all right? If you can get your hands on 25 milligram Masterolone tablets, Proviron tablets, use a pill cutter. These pills, the Masterolone pills, are actually really easy to cut in pill cutter because they've got a crease right in the middle. You can just fucking cut the thing in half and run 12.5 milligrams on top of your TRT protocol for 2 weeks straight at like between 5 and 8 p.m. For 5 to 10% of people, it's going to stimulate them to the point where that may mess with sleep. Well, the rest of everybody else is going to be completely fine with it. Run that for 2 weeks and see how you fare, right? Almost guaranteed you're going to have alleviation from elevated estradiol, that symptoms that you're having, and almost definitely within that 2 week period you're going to notice a marked improvement in libido and erection quality, so long as everything else is okay. If you feel like you can tolerate 12.5 milligrams, just 12.5 milligrams a day, and you feel fucking great and things are trending in the next and on the right direction, it's really up to you on whether or not you want to increase the dose. You can increase the dose to 25 milligrams a day, after which you run the risk of side effects. Maybe you can tolerate more, maybe you can't. It's going to be your decision at that point, but you got to make the decision after a couple of weeks. Can I go to 25 milligrams a day? And if you can, what I would personally do is split that up between 12.5 milligrams in the morning and 12.5 milligrams at around 8 p.m. Right? Then you have steady state Proviron in the blood. Again, active half-life is 12 to 13 hours, right? So it's actually affecting you in these positive ways for 24 hours, but you'll have steady state if you dose it essentially every 12 or 13 hours. So maybe that's you dose it in the morning at 6 a.m. and then you dose it again in the evening at 6 p.m., 8 a.m. in the morning, 8 a.m. in the evening. I really wouldn't take it past 9, 10 p.m. because then you run the risk of overstimulation. Some people respond to it that way and you'll have a rough time sleeping. What you're ultimately going to find, and what I have found personally, which is why I'm so excited about this and why I was kind of pumped that Dave Lee knew a whole lot about Proviron and was like able to talk about his experience, like it just mirrors everything I've seen for the past many years working with hardcore sexual dysfunction in men that like are just unable to revive it with TRT, and working with guys that are on TRT that can't get their protocols dialed in no matter what they do. They're either over aromatizing or they're not. They're sitting at 35 picograms per milliliter and they're dick still doesn't work. Again, there's all these unknowns. What if the person was hypogonadal for a long time? What if they've got inhibited 5-alpha reductase? What if they, have been deprived essentially of DHT binding at the androgen receptors for a long period of time? We don't know at the tissue level what that does. Probably downregulates nitric oxide, among other things. I mean, you probably, have some sort of downregulation on the neurological cascades regarding libido because of improper DHT binding over, a historical period. So these things are critically important for people to, get under control on TRT. And this is the argument for low dose or regular dose Proviron on TRT. Now here's the problem, okay? Last little caveat. You can't fucking get it prescribed in the US, okay? So you know what that means. You got to get it UGL, and that doesn't necessarily mean like homebrew, you can get pharmaceutical Proviron. It's being produced everywhere around the world, just not in the United States, right? It's being approved or produced rather. It's being produced across the puddle, right? So you got to find a way, talk to your people, et cetera, to get yourself some Proviron. But here's the bottom line. I mean, if it's really, really critical and you've done everything you can to dial in and you can't dial in, or you just want to try it, you're going to have to go out on a limb and get creative and try to find a way to get it. All right, gentlemen, if you needed an entire overhaul of your sexual system, your TRT protocol, erection function, nootropics, brain performance, you got to restore dopamine, or you've got to do any number of the things together that I just talked about, hire me. We've got 90-day one-on-one hands-on coaching programs and 180-day. This is 3 months and 6 months where you're working directly with me, pretty ongoingly. I'm formulating the protocols. I'm checking in on you. I'm looking at your labs. I'm designing your protocols. Like, the most important thing about this is, like, I'm just getting guys better, right? Guys usually come to me with libido, erection issues, otherwise issues, dopamine problems. No one's been able to fix. They've paid Daniel Amen 10 grand for the brain clinic and they've done absolutely nothing, and I get them better in under a month. But especially relative to sexual function, you guys can hire me at underaminutelifecortex.com. I've got 5 slots open right now for large scale coaching programs. Torque Stack 35% off. Code in the description of this video. All day mental energy. Cortex Stack, high powered, fast acting stimulant, 25% off. Code is in the description of this video. All right, boys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you have a great week moving forward. Much more content coming soon. Sub to the channel. It makes a huge difference. Share with your friends. Share our posts. Comment down below. I want to see what you guys have to say. Otherwise, have an epic day, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.